Uh. Good morning. Good morning.
What's up, everybody? It's the Morning Deuce. How is everybody doing? Wednesday, June 15th. We're going to talk about honesty today. This is another segment, I guess, of Dave's dating life, which I guess isn't really dating, but Dave's romantic life, which makes it sound a little bit more upbeat. And that sounds like a really crappy, like a Judd Apatow movie that was really bad. Dave's romantic life. And it's like Jason Segel and Ed Helms, and they're like trying to get Jason Segel a girlfriend because like Ed Helms is in a happy relationship, and then Ed Helms realizes that he actually like hates his wife and everything's miserable, and then they both run off forever and they hate everybody, and then eventually at the end Ed Helms is like, wait, I actually do like my wife, and the girl that Jason Segel was running away from the whole time, he ends up being happy with himself, and then he finds her. That's Dave's Romantic Life by Judd Apatow. But honesty, that's what we're here to talk about. This is why it comes up. We're going to power through this story, but I went out Saturday with some friends, ended up getting to a bar, club type area, and I danced with a woman, and we ended up hitting it off pretty well. And I went back to her house at the end of the evening, and the next morning I awoke and we had like a brief conversation. And basically the conversation the next day wasn't awkward at all, but we were just hanging out, just sort of talking about, it's like Sunday morning, just talking about whatever. And we kind of just sort of straightforwardly kind of hit on just like, hey, so what kind of what's next? It wasn't awkward. It was pretty straightforward. And she just said, like, listen, I have to be honest, like, I feel a little guilty today. She's like, I'm 30 and I'm kind of now, I just don't feel that great, and it has nothing to do with you. But I went out yesterday hoping, thinking that I wouldn't kind of party too much, and thinking that I wouldn't, hook up with someone. That wasn't what I intended to do. That's not where I really want to go. She basically said, I feel bad. I feel guilty. I met someone, and I've just been talking to them for a really short period of time. They live in New Mexico. So obviously, like, I don't have any expectations on what's going on there. But I do know that I would feel bad if they did what I did. And she basically said, like, I thought that, I like that person, and I was into it enough to be able to say, like, no to someone that I was attracted to. And clearly I can't. And she was like, she made it basically seem like she wanted to go in the direction now where she's sort of thinking forward, with someone that she wants to build a relationship with. And instead, she sort of just basically wasn't able to make that decision that night. Instead of deferring gratification, if you will, building a relationship, she kind of just went with the immediate satisfaction of meeting someone she had a good vibe with and, hooking up with them. And that conversation kind of just came up, and it was totally normal. Like, that morning I wasn't really thinking in any direction. I wasn't thinking like, oh, I want to see this person again, or I wasn't thinking I would never see them again. It was just sort of like, how do we feel about this situation that happened? And she wasn't saying anything negative towards me or like the event in general. She was just basically saying, like, I wanted to kind of move in a different direction, and I'm a little disappointed that I slipped into this. Sort of like if someone was trying to eat healthy for a week, and then, they ate 2 donuts. And it would be like, well, it's not the donut's fault for being good. I enjoyed the donut, but I was trying to be a healthy person this week, and, maybe I messed up. It sort of felt like that, and I kind of actually appreciated it. And I was talking to a couple friends about this, and some of them were thinking like, oh, that's offensive. Like, I wish she had just said like, no, this isn't good. This isn't going to work. But when someone says that, you kind of think like, well, obviously it's me. Like, they either decided I wasn't attractive enough, or maybe they didn't really enjoy me romantically. But when someone just tells to you, like, I'm trying to kind of get a direction going in my life, and this isn't really it. This was maybe like not something that I wanted to do, and I'm not upset that I did it. It happened, but it's not really a direction I want to go. So it was fun meeting you. Like, that was the end, and sort of just the night was over, and I just walked home the next day, and we said goodbye. But that was okay, because I knew kind of exactly where I stood. I wasn't offended. I didn't have any unreasonable expectations. I wasn't thinking like, oh, well, I should call her, or like try to take her out to breakfast or get to know her. Like, I don't want to be a mean person who just doesn't put in the effort to get to know someone, or I don't want to like, completely cut off contact, because that makes me like a jerk and a player if I just never talk to this person again. I didn't have to walk home with that feeling, or making a decision about how I felt about this person, or seeing if I wanted to string something out. It was just sort of, hey, this is how I feel. How do you feel with that? And it's like, well, I understand where you're coming from, and like, that's okay. And I wasn't really have any plans in particular about this, so that's fine. And everything was good. Some people, that I talked to were like, they totally understood where I was coming from. They would take it 100 times if someone was just honest to them. Because if the person's not particularly honest and they just say like, oh yeah, I'll talk to you some other time, and then they don't, you're kind of thinking like, well, why aren't they? Was it because of something I did? Was I not enough? Or did I not look the way that they'd hoped or remember from the night before or whatever? But when someone's just kind of honest with you, you at least have confirmation. You don't have to think about what you should do, or if you did something right, or if something changed. You just have kind of confirmation of what's going on. And I think that's really valuable, because my counterpoint to that, when someone said like, well, that's just this girl, she was just mean, she shouldn't have done any of that. And I was thinking, I don't think it was mean. I think she just had an idea of what she wanted, and this wasn't it, and she expressed it. I actually thought it was great. I had something recently where I had a mutual friend, and we'd hung out and talked a couple times at bigger events, but nothing really had matriculated from that. Then there were a couple times where we were supposed to get together with a group of friends, and both of us just kept missing each other. And we ended up talking via, texting and a couple phone calls or whatever, and just talking, kind of developing a connection. And eventually it got pretty personal, and we wanted to spend time with each other. And then we did, and we went on a date, and the date went really well. And at the end of the night, we were just thinking like, we decided to stay together, but it didn't really move very fast. It was kind of like, hey, we both are interested in each other, so let's let this thing kind of go slow and see where we get to, because we're maybe worth putting a little bit of effort into. And then that person, I felt like I developed a little bit of a connection with. We talked a little bit, and basically, a long story short, is they came to visit the area that I lived. They moved like not too far away. They moved a little bit away. Came to visit the area I lived, and then there was no communication after that. It was like, oh, I'm going to be in the area, we should hang out. And we tried. I reached out, got nothing back. And then after that, it was kind of just reaching out and nothing but silence. So I was confused. I was like, well, did I do something wrong? I thought everything went pretty well. We had a pretty personalized connection. We'd invested some time and energy, and now I'm just getting no response. I'm getting ghosted, which I've talked about before. A little bit of time goes by. I talk to a friend of that person. She brings it up. Oh, I heard about you spending some time with my friend. They said all these great things about you. They said all these nice things about you. I was like, oh, I guess it just didn't work out for whatever reason. They stopped talking to me. And the person was like, well, that doesn't make sense. They brought all these good things up to me. They said all these good things. I don't really understand why that is. It's not normal for them to do this. So, they must have thought something of you. So then I reached out again, because I had that sitting in the back of my head. Like, why is this going on? Why is this going on? Reached out again. Still didn't hear anything back. To me, that is far worse. To, invest time and energy in someone and just be left with the uncertainty of like, wait, why didn't this work? Is it something I did? I mean, it could be a million things. She could have met somebody else, could have been a huge change in her life. There could have been something I did wrong that I didn't even know about. There could be a bazillion factors, but they're all so uncertain. And you feel like maybe you invested some personal energy in someone, and just kind of the lack of honesty of the situation didn't feel good. Whereas just knowing the honesty of a situation when it comes to dating, I think was better. Even if it's not the honesty you necessarily want to hear, or it's not the best way to feel, at least you feel certain of where your standing is. I think that's my new thing, not just romantically, but all the time. I think I'm just going to be kind of brutally honest. And not in a mean way, not in an angry way, but I just don't want people left wondering how they stand or how I feel about them or what I think of their work or their effort or in general. You know, I'm not going to be volunteering negative information like, hey, by the way, you suck at this. They're like, oh, by the way, the work you turned in was crap. But, you know, if someone asks, like, how am I doing with this, and they're not doing well, I would be honest with them, but in the most productive way. I'd turn my read receipts on my phone on because if someone texts me and I look at it and see it and I don't want to write back for whatever reason, or I'm not writing back right away, I'm not going to hide that fact from them anymore. I'm just going to let it kind of be known. This is where I'm at. I'm trying to live an honesty first life because I think the worst thing is overanalyzing and thinking maybe there's something that you could have done differently when it's just about communicating honestly. I think most problems can be put in their best life if people are just able to vocalize how they feel. So that's the end of that weird Dave's romantic life situation. I guess there's a humble brag because I met a woman last weekend, so hashtag humble brag for me. But that wasn't really the point of this. The point of this was like, even if you meet someone you're not going to talk to them again, you get that out honestly, you're good to go. It's the lingering thoughts of uncertainty or the lingering thoughts of without knowing exactly what's going on. That can be harmful. So let's keep it honest. And that's the end of part 1. For part 2, we're going to talk about the importance of sleep. I've been kind of obsessed with this for a while. Everybody loves sleeping. I mean, everybody loves sleeping. It's the best. I can sleep pretty much all the time. And I'm really good at rolling over. I'm a night person, so I can just sleep and sleep and sleep in the morning. It's the best. I can sleep wherever. But I never let myself sleep enough. I know I'm the type of person, I should be in bed now, and then I find myself awake for another 30 or 40 minutes. The minute I decide I'm really going to sleep, then I go to sleep in 2 seconds. Which I read somewhere once, if you fall sound asleep in less than 5 minutes of trying to fall asleep, it means that you're way too fatigued. That's bad. You should be taking more than 5 minutes to fall asleep. And I don't. I fall asleep almost immediately, which means I'm probably forcing myself to stay awake too long and waking up too early. But what I always find, especially now, and if it might be just a symptom of getting a little bit older, I'm constantly tired. And I realize that's a weird thing to say to people who might be parents, and they're like, you don't know tired till you have a kid, and I get that. But I just never, it's rare that I feel fully awake. I just always feel tired. And I think in general, we're not getting enough sleep as a culture. The NPR did an awesome podcast with their Freakonomics thing. I think NPR works with Freakonomics, but it was about sleep. And basically, the end of it, they talked about how we really don't know enough about sleep. We haven't done enough sleep that are kind of gender or ethnicity specific. Someone did a study like a million years ago, and it was like, oh, we need 8 hours of sleep. And everyone just kept repeating it, that we assumed it was fact, but no one really researched the study again. And it turns out there's probably a lot more information that it differs based on gender, ethnicity, other things, what you're doing with your actual day. But this comes out because an article came out from the American Academy of Pediatrics, and they're basically saying children 6 to 12 years old should be getting 9 to 12 hours of sleep every 24 hours, which means like a child who's 10 should be going to bed at like 8 p.m. every night if they're getting up at 7 for school. I mean, that's a realistic thing, and it should be happening like that for years. And then when you're in high school, you should be getting 8 to 10 hours like every night. And I know I never did. And those are kind of staggering numbers to me. I think we've been underestimating the amount of sleep we should be giving our bodies in a perfect world. So one of my great friends, Dylan, he conducts sleep studies, and he went to a conference in Denver this past weekend that was all about the study behind sleep and athletes. And the information that he learned appeared to be fascinating. And so at some point we're going to have him on the podcast, hopefully in the next week, maybe not this Friday, but next Friday. And he's going to tell us a little bit more about what he learned. But I think in general, when we say 8 hours, we're cutting ourselves short. I think we should be sleeping more. I really do think that people who want to live active, outgoing lifestyles have to carve sleep into their bodies more. And I think there's a lot of data that says looking at screens and artificial light all the time messes with your ability to sleep. So these are all things I want to study more into. But yeah, for part 2 today, it's about getting rest, letting our body recover, letting our minds recover, and then being fully awake when we are awake. I need to do a better job of that. That's it. It's the Morning Deuce. David Spindle. Happy Wednesday. Peace.